Part 4. How can these 7 characteristics be applied to the development of tests in the less commonly taught languages? Why is that important? First, let's take a step back. Has anybody been involved in the development of norm reference standardized tests? Okay, well, this summary does not do the process justice, but it is a summary, and as long as you recognize that, you'll be all right. And I put it here because of the contrast that we're going to see between the development of norm reference tests and criterion reference tests. All right, first step, create a table of specifications. I bet every teacher does that before they create their chapter tests even, don't you? No? You don't decide how much you're going to, how many points you're going to give for vocabulary versus how much you're going to give. See, you're kind of doing that. You're laying it out, at least mentally, and you say, I'll have this number of points for this and this number of points for this, and I'm going to balance it, and I want to make sure I cover these points. That's a table of specifications. All right? You don't have to train yourself. You've been doing this for years. But if you're developing a standardized test, you need to train item writers in item writing techniques. Can everybody write a good item? No, not really. It's a special skill, and sometimes teachers get so involved in the teaching process that spills over into their item writing. Okay, then that group of trained people develop items. Then the items are tested on people. Usually 100 or more are required as a minimum, just to test the items. All right, what is that? What is the implication of that for the less commonly taught languages? If the students are all involved in the testing of the items, there are no students left to take the test when it's finished, right? All right, then statistics are used to eliminate, quote, bad items. What are bad items? Pardon? High miss. Yeah, where everybody misses it, or everybody gets it right, or items where the students with the lowest scores get it right, but the students with the high scores get it wrong. You know, those are the kind of statistics they look at. And they eliminate then the bad items, and then they take what's left, and they have a test that they can administer, and they report the results compared to the grades of other students. Okay? How does that contrast with criterion reference tests? Well, you have an advantage because you at least have a proficiency scale that gets you started on your table of specifications. It tells you what kind of tasks you want to include, in what context, what degrees of accuracy, and you may decide you're not going to cover the whole scale, but you start there. You still have to train item writers, but now you have to train them in 2 things, not just in writing items, but before that in the scales themselves and what it means to be an advanced. Now, before you go, and they develop the items according to the specifications, and those items should be linked to a specific task, context, accuracy, so it's bi-level. And then you use expert reviewers, not students, to review the items. This one version of this that I like is called a modified Angoff procedure, named after a fellow named Angoff. And you can get a panel of experts to independently rate the items and say, what level does this address in terms of task? What level does it address in terms of the question asked? And out of that, if all your professional panel agrees, and they've done it independently, then you can go ahead and assemble the test. But it's not just a big test where you get a total score of 60 or 70, because someone asked, what does it mean to pass a proficiency test? It really becomes a combination of sub-level tests. Say you were going to test from novice to superior, it would have within it, for instance, a novice test, an intermediate test, an advanced test, and a superior test. Then passing is determined not by your total score, but by your pattern of responses in each of those subtests. Would that make sense? Because that's the way you're approaching it against criterion, you don't need to pre-test it on all 200 of your students. Instead, you go with the professional judgments, but you do track the statistics and let the statistics inform you where these professional judgments all might have made the same mistake. Right? So there is a check, but it's very, very different. All right? One of our goals, gee, I even said our, Kirk. Are you going to pat me on the back? One of Kirk's goals.
No, our goals. This is not my project. We've been talking here.
One of the things that we'd like to accomplish is the development of proficiency tests for these languages, Arabic, Turkish, Hebrew, and Farsi.
You said the word there, you blew it. You said Farsi, now we're in trouble.
Okay. When asked, when there is sufficient interest to do so.
No, I meant
Yeah.
our folks, I was kidding
Oh.
about
As compared to Persian?
Terms.
Yeah, you know, I still haven't learned. I need to be educated. If somebody would talk to me afterwards and tell me in which context and which settings I'm supposed to use which word, I'd
Not the
appreciate it.
word,
Okay.
not the word.
All right. And we decided we'd like to start with reading because these are going to be computer-delivered online tests that would be very, very inexpensive. So, and given where we are right now in terms of our instructional programs, we think it would probably be adequate if the test went through the advanced levels. The other thing we want to make sure is that we're not competing, that we're not wasting energy and resources by having multiple projects going on at the same time to compete with each other. If at all possible, we want to collaborate. We know that ACTFL is launching a review process for Arabic and wants to do it for other languages to elaborate and expand on the proficiency definitions for those languages, for instance. We definitely want to make sure we're in sync with that effort. All right, that's end of part 4. Questions? Volunteers? Yes?
I have a comment about the relationship between achievement, performance, and proficiency. I was struck by how the novice level seemed to be tasks that might be called achievement type of tasks. And intermediate is kind of performative type of tasks. Is it possible to say that in doing a proficiency type of testing, in a sense you're using all 3 types of testing skills? So at the earliest level, you're really kind of doing an achievement style testing.
Yeah, because of the expanding domains or to view it the other way, the limited domains for level 1, you could approach it as you need to be competent in these areas, and since they're limited, you can actually move toward at least performance, if not a proficiency. We would hope that at that level, one of the requirements for intermediate is that you can create things you've never said before.
Or
Within familiar areas.
Seems to be the definition of performance.
Which is, yeah, the scale starts right there. Yeah. Okay, let's do one quick thing, and we're going to get out of here even on time, I think.